This is a number 4 cartridge Kodak camera, initially patented in 1885 and in commercial production from 1897 to 1907. It's been in the family for a number of years. Let's get a good view here. I'll give you a little background on it. This was sold by Kodak largely from 1897 to 1907. It was one of the first portable cameras, and I'll show you an example of it folded up here in a minute and you'll see what I mean. I'll give you a little bit of a historical background of it, and then I'll let Richard Bertrand Jr. give you a little bit of a background of the technical workings of the camera, which you will see actually are rather significant as far as from an engineering standpoint. When this camera first came out, it was promoted as a cyclist camera. At that time, cycling was a huge fad in America, and was very popular, and this was a camera that could be carried and used on a cycling tour, or perhaps also, say, for example, on a picnic or something along those lines. The price tag on it back then was between $20 and $67. That would translate between $500 to $1,800 nowadays. So it was not an inexpensive camera. It was really targeted towards the advanced amateur photographer. Kodak sold during those 10 years 90,000 of these, so it was a rather successful product for them. It allows for both cartridge photography and plate photography. The lens is made of glass by Bausch & Lomb, a company you may be more familiar with from making of contact lenses. But you'll see with the materials being primarily wood, glass, metal, and some leather, a rather sophisticated imaging system. And let me go ahead and show you what it looks like folded up and why it was easily portable. Okay, here it is, all folded up and compact. Let me move it around a little bit and take a look at this and see. Yeah, it's pretty much a portable camera for back then. You know, it's nice, compact. As you can see, this has a fair amount of wear to it, which is good. It meant that someone actually used that camera quite a bit. Cameras like this you may find now, since there were 90,000 of them. Some are in museums. Some you can actually buy, like for example on eBay. They've typically been restored, so this leather would have had like a, you would see it would look much nicer and prettier in black. But as you can see, it has a handle here, so again, it was portable and something that could be used and transported easily, compared to, if you recall from old movies back then, the camera setups were quite elaborate and not easily transportable. This was a system that was one of the first ones, and why they sold 90,000 of them, even though they cost between $500 and $1,800. So let me let Richard Bertrand Jr. tell you a little bit more about the technical workings of this camera.
Open the camera by pushing the button on the top. Put the door all the way down. The next thing you'd actually do before pulling out the bellows is drop this locking lever down, and reaching in the back behind this locking lever is another bent tab latch. Pull it toward you about 3/8 of an inch, and then you can take up the back of the camera door and load your film. It loaded on spools. In this case you have a take-up spool in the supply side. In order to remove it, there's a little device at the top of my thumb. You just move it over. It drops a pin out of the top of the spool, and the spool can come out of the camera, move over to this side. So with this lever pulled forward, you can bring out the bellows on the door rail. It's brought out all the way until it stops, and then you can lock the lever. You can then focus the camera using this knob, which will pull out away from the rail so that it can be accessed past the door to move the bellows back and forth. And this scale then becomes your indicator for where you're focused. Underneath the lens board is another latch assembly. If you push it in towards the camera, you can then move the lens left and right on a rail to effect parallax correction for architecture photography. I think that there must have been a ground glass that you could have put in place of the film door so that you could see what your parallax correction did. You also could undo a latch on this side of the camera. Allows your lens to move up and down on another set of rails for more perspective correction. The lens itself is a very nice Bosch & Lomb. There's 3 settings that are controlled by the knob on the top of the camera. One is time, one is bulb, and one is instantaneous. This cylinder device on this side of the lens was operated with a rubber hose that attached onto this nipple and went to a squeeze bulb and actuated the cylinder itself up and down to trigger the shutter. This lever above the cylinder is to cock the shutter, and this lever is to trip the shutter. It is a little bit sticky, probably could stand a little cleaning if you wanted to get it operational. In time, the lens stays open as long as you hold the bulb. In bulb, the lens stays open as long as you squeeze the bulb, and instantaneously, probably at about a 60th of a second in shutter duration. F-stops are controlled down here at this scale. That's the opening in the iris. I think that's about all. This is a viewfinder for horizontal photography, and this is a viewfinder for vertical photography. To close the camera back into the case, make sure all your parallax corrections are back at their centers. Loosen the main rail locking lever. Put the camera all the way back into the body of the camera. Lock the lever. Both of these side supports need to be unlatched. The door closes up and then latches in place.